Okay.
Welcome, everybody, to Saturdays with Tara. I'm Mary Beth at the Law of Attraction Club on the web at the loaclub.com. If you have a question or a comment, please unmute yourself or you can type in the chat box to the right of your screen. Our friend Robin will be bringing through Tara for us this morning. So welcome to Tara and to Robin. Over to you.
Thank you. And here we are in our intersections again. And what is it that we are doing here? What is it that you are doing here? And we are here in response to your summoning. It is as if you rub the magic bottle and the genie appears. What many of you don't realize, of course, is that you are here in response to our magic summoning, and we rub our bottle and you appear. It is an equal opportunity intersection here, an equal creation. We don't call it a co-creation very often because that implies that we are sitting around designing how this will be jointly, as if it's the only one experience that we can all share. And that is not the truth of it. The truth of it is that you and we and everybody who is an individuated consciousness or entity of some sort creates their own world and their own environment. And everything in their experience, in their context, in what they appear to be, in the realm that they are, everything matches, of course, every part of you. You are a mirror to your surroundings. And by that we don't mean that you physically look in the mirror and that's your surroundings. We call your surroundings the physical you. That's part of your surroundings. And the world that wraps around you is also part of your surroundings. And all of that, the physical you and the physical world, and if you really want to get serious about it, the non-physical world also, all of that is the context in which you are having your experience, and it is a match to you. And as you make a new choice, what do we mean by that? As you make a new belief choice, as you find, if you like, some part of your tapestry of beliefs that no longer serves you, you discover that there are a few beliefs in there which you made for good reason perhaps at some point, seemed like a good idea at the time, that are no longer serving you, and you desire to change them. And every time, of course, that you feel uncomfortable, any time that you feel bad in any way, shape or form, there is some point within that thought that you are having which is at odds with who you are and where you want to be. So there is a thread in your tapestry relevant to that thought which is no longer serving you. And so you make a choice not to believe that lie, if you want to use that word. You make a choice not to believe that lie anymore. And you make the choice, if you like, consciously. You have a history of having that choice sit back there, as we will be talking about, mostly unspoken, mostly unbrought into consciousness, mostly left there, but you have a habit of all those things. And so the choice may be, in fact, a choice today and a choice tonight and a choice tomorrow and a choice next week to do the same thing, to move the same point of belief to a different place. And if you find that it persists, then you have the opportunity always, of course, to move that belief to attempt to move that belief, to do some process that will help you move that belief to a different point. So here you are, and this is all about making different choices. That is the whole nature of this discourse that we are having here. And so let us talk a little about the subject for today, which is you can choose the lie you want or the life you want. You can't have both. And of course, what happened in this to the law of attraction and all of this, which says there is nothing you cannot be, do, or have. And we would say there is nothing you cannot be, do, or have. So this is, if you like, an overstatement. This is a provocative statement. And of course, you can have anything you want. But in all of these discussions we have with you, of course, we are seeking for you to take the path of least resistance. We are seeking to have you think in ways that will most easily allow you to make those changes in your tapestry. So, of course, in this discussion, we are always going to be making the case for taking the life you want. The life you want. And so perhaps we would say, choose the life you want, not the lie that's holding you back, because that is the easiest way to get to where you want to go. And as we progress here today, we would like to look with you at some different sorts of assumptions that consciously or unconsciously underlie the thinking of different groups of people, and you will be in one or some of those. But these assumptions, another word is chosen beliefs, are mostly, as we said, unspoken. You make these decisions about what to believe and you store them away in what we might loosely call your subconscious. And there they sit, and mostly you don't bring them to mind. And then when you feel uncomfortable or uneasy or bad, and we say, what is it that sits beneath this? Then some of you, of course, get to the point of delving down into that and discovering the thought and the belief that sits beneath it all. But mostly these are unspoken. They just happen to be part of your particular story. And after we've looked at those, we will work our way backwards from some of the fundamentals and give you 3 ways of approaching life, the 3 biggies as we call them, that will support you on your journey towards what you want, towards that which you are seeking, towards that which you want to create in your life. So what for you is true about you and your world? And what are the undeniable facts of life here? What's as plain as the nose on your face? What are the obvious common sense facts that no reasonable person would ever question? And of course, all of these answers will be particular to you. They will be your answers. But there are some things that you have in these categories. They just are. You just know them to be. And some of them are absolute, and they cut to the very nature of who you are, and they serve you. But you have a lingering, if you like, set of facts that relate to who you are and what control you have over your destiny in this world. And those are the ones perhaps that we would think about challenging. And so let us move to some groups of thinking. There are those in this one's world, and probably in yours, the materialists who choose to take the world at face value as a physical-only place where all questions must have a physical-only answer. And the big assumption here for this group, although in this group it is very common that they claim they make no assumptions, but the big assumption here is that if anything non-physical existed, you would be able by physical experiment to verify it and measure it. There's also another assumption in part of this, which is a somewhat, if you like, ego-driven assumption. That if anything non-physical existed, surely I would have experienced it. Here am I, a thinking, rational person, and I've had none of that. And so those people who experience that must be irrational. And for this group, the scientific method is the Bible. It is the absolute bedrock on which of all their reasoning is based. Even though in this one's world it's interesting that the new science of the day has reached a point where it questions the very idea of solidarity, of solid physicalness. There is great speculation as to what time really is, because there are some events that demonstrate that time is not, as it seems, an inviolate law. And then, of course, there are experiments in which the observer affects the result. In other words, there's this pesky thing called consciousness, which affects the physical world. And so even for those that are materialists, even in that world, some of the science of the day is challenging the very base assumptions on which that is based. And if you're in that group, then for you, the undeniable, common sense, self-evident answers to those questions above, what just is that you live on a planet Earth, which exists in a galaxy, which is one of many, all of which was formed perhaps out from a Big Bang. And sustainable life itself is the result of a physical accident, and sustainable life is a result of an accident finding this particular planet where life was able to thrive, where conditions by chance allowed it to evolve into ever higher and higher forms, until here you are, one of those. And you see yourself perhaps as a human being born of certain parents on a certain day and time, in a certain place, in a certain country. And you grew up, and you will grow old and physically deteriorate until you die, when you and your consciousness will cease to exist. And that is the story of some. Then there are those who perhaps have a more nuanced version of that, who believe in perhaps duality. You accept the reality of your physicality, and your answers are similar to those above. You see yourself as a human being born of certain parents on a certain day and time in a certain place and in a certain country. For example, you grew up and will grow old and physically degenerate until you die. The difference is that you may say that your consciousness will not cease to exist. Perhaps it is that you have a soul which carries on. Perhaps you believe there's an all-powerful God who had a hand in the creation of life, and in particular in the creation of your life, which started at your birth. And this God also created the physical world. This God may have a particular purpose for your life and is seeking to have you fulfill that purpose. It's a God whose judgment of your worthiness perhaps affects your afterlife. That even though you were born at a certain point in time and you began at a certain point in time, even though, of course, there are words like eternal and everlasting used within the system of beliefs, which means it must be timeless. Nevertheless, you were born at a certain time. You began at a certain time. And there is an afterlife which goes on forever. And this story, of course, is a hybrid. It's a physical reality based view of things. And you are fitting it, if you will, to some extent within the context of this spiritual story. In this one's world, in this one's experience personally, that is not an easy thing to do. It's something he attempted to do, but was never successful at that, to the point of arriving at a peaceful resolution of the questions that arose. For some, this is a wonderful place to be. Some make this their story and adapt it and live within it and are very joyful. It's all a question of what you choose in life. And some in that group also believe, and we say somewhat here, in the law of attraction. That you can change your future. You can order your world by the way you think, by the choices you make, by your attitude and your focus. Well, the law of attraction, of course, is very absolute. It says you can be, have, or do anything. There's nothing you cannot change. And as we have said before, if you can have your world be any way you want it to be, and you can, and that other person over there can have it be what they want, and they can also, and you want different things, which is inevitable, then you cannot be sharing the same world. So if you see yourself in a one world shared by everybody, in other words, if you are basing your view of life in that this is a physical existence and I am a physical creature who has a soul that will go on, then there's a certain disconnect, is there not here? You have an immediate problem which usually gets resolved by watering down the law of attraction until it means not much of anything. You have to start saying, well, the way I think influences my life, but there are other factors involved. Of course, we tell you that there are no other factors involved. Because here is the absolute truth about all of you. And even as we say this, of course, we ask you to test this within your own heart here, within your own soul here, within your own inner thinking here. Test this. Does it feel right for you? Because that is the ultimate arbiter of what is your truth. And anything we tell you, or anyone tells you, or any entity conveys to you, needs always to be held with that in mind. It needs to be checked against your own feelings, because your path is your path and your truth is your truth. And we would suggest to you that these things are absolute, but that is for you to choose. You are of choice in all things. But at your core, you are a non-physical consciousness. You are not a physical being having a spiritual experience. You are a non-physical being in which you are having a space-time physical experience. It is the context you have selected. At your core, you are always connected. You are a part of the collective consciousness of all it is, an extension of that, a part of it, call it what you will. Your intentions and belief choices defined you, carved you out of the clay of all that is, and set you on the path to where you are here. And all along that path, you have been making new choices. You have been modifying your story. And as you modify your story from experience to choice, to experience to choice, to experience to choice, you morph into a new version of you. You change versions. And then a new matching version of everything and everyone instantly wraps itself around you. It doesn't wrap itself around the physical body because the physical body is a part of that wrapping. The physical body wraps itself around you. And that's what you describe as the law of attraction in action. And as we said some weeks back now, in some ways calling it the law of attraction is not doing a disservice, because it is such an automatic and fundamental part of the very existence of you that it is perhaps way beyond the idea of a law. You attract moment by moment a version of a physical you, a physical world and a non-physical world, all of which are a match to you. You are twins, if you will. There's the thoughts and the choices and the beliefs. And reflecting of that is everything else. The physical you, the physical world, the non-physical world. And that is all an illusion. And we use the word illusion to in some ways jar you out of this concept that it's real. But we do not mean by the word illusion to take away from the value of this experience, because the experience is real. And the illusion is that magnificent thing that gives you the context for that. It is your magnificent creation. But it is, nevertheless, illusory. The experience is real, but the story is a work of fiction. Everything is an inside job. You do not see that physical world that exists beyond you. It is a movie playing in your mind, and just your mind. In a sense, it is your movie alone. And yes, there are other players in it. You have invited into your movie matching versions of all the other players, and they are playing their part in your movie, even as you are playing your part in their movie. But let's keep it to you, because that is the important point here. This is your creation. Everything is an inside job for you. And so now we move to those of you who are starting to understand all of that. You are starting to let go of those belief sets that you had, those traditional beliefs about the nature of physicalness, about the nature of everything around you, that you are, if you like, born of certain parents on a certain day and time in a certain place in a certain country. Can you see that as you start to let go of that and you see the possibilities of stepping into new future versions of you, that sometimes it's hard to shake off the remnants of that old former belief system? And we've just given an example. For example, the story of your past. You still see yourself as that human of certain parents, a certain day and time, in a certain place, in a certain country. You can pick up your driver's license and say, yeah, see, I was born on this date and this time. And that's okay, of course. There are no right or wrong stories. There's just your story. You can play this game in any way that you want to, in different versions of you, all equally valid and real, you are making an infinity of different choices. So it's okay if you choose within the context of your story to continue to believe that this is you, X days, months, and years old, living in this place, that this is essentially me and I'm the one that's doing all of this. You can choose to believe that, and you can choose to believe that. Or you can choose to challenge that to some extent. Because for this version of you, since you are asking us how to create more of what you want, we say it helps if you will allow your creation tapestry to continue its evolution by letting go of those remnants. For example, once again, if you are creating the illusion that is your world by your thoughts, can you see that your past is as variable as your future? We have spoken of this many times before. Memory is just another word for imagination. Now, we know that this may be a big leap. We know that this is perhaps a mental gymnastics we are asking you to go through here. But we're suggesting that you start to get used to the idea of it. Let it be within you for a while and let it become part of you. Now, when we say choose the lie or choose the life, we're not expecting you to say, okay, I now understand that I am not this person, I have not this past and whatever, and you really step into that belief system. That may not be something that happens in your time-space reality in an instant. We understand that. We are just suggesting here that you will, at least within the space of this intersection here, acknowledge that this is possibly so. We promise you that it is possibly so. We promise you that it is probably so. We promise you it is definitely so. But allow yourself, if you want to start with possibly. And as you do that, now, from that possibly, new possibilities start to open up. You see, what it does, it starts to lessen your grip on that old story that you have. It starts to make you less, if you like, dependent on the reactions, less likely to believe the reactions as inevitable, less likely to always tread down the same path. Because change, of course, is what we are all about here. So how does this help? Because if you're locked into the concept that your past determines your present, and to a large extent your future, then it's more and difficult to accept that you can make changes. If you still know that what you did 10 years ago, and 10 months ago, and 10 days ago, and 10 minutes ago, has led you inexorably to your here and now, if that is what you still know, then it is difficult, because you have a habit of connecting the dots and drawing the line into the future, it is difficult to see that you can spin on a dime and make changes now. But if you understand the absolute truth here that we are suggesting to you, as we have described to you, you have to see that this is real nonsense. And we say, start to face it. Deny it, deny it, deny it. And what is really as plain as the nose on your face is that you are hanging on to lies about who you are. You're hanging on to them not deliberately and consciously. You are hanging on to them out of habit. And we say to you, if it is that you wish to make changes, then we suggest to you that it's time to rethink. You can choose the lie you want, or you can choose the life you want. You can't easily do both. It's interesting because we in this one came up with this choice here because he was typing on his computer some ideas about what we would talk about today. And he looked up and saw that he had done a typo. Instead of choose the life, he had put choose the lie. And immediately this whole discussion opened up before him. We encourage you to choose the life you want and all of its delicious possibilities for obvious reasons. And here are the three biggies, as we call them, that we would suggest as things you should focus on as you step in this new direction. And that focus of yours will make the difference. If you make no change in what you focus upon, then what arrives in your world, in your context, in that which wraps itself around you, will always be the same. You can change only by changing your focus, and that is a conscious choice you make. So number one, let go of that fake reality. Now, we do not mean that you have to step out of the physical world. It's a process we're talking about here. Loosen the death grip with which you are holding on to your now world. Spend more time, as we say, in the stands, watching the game, even as you play the game on the field. Daydream, imagine more and more about what you want to be and do and have. And as you do that, you'll identify more and more with that new, equally valid version of your world. Equally valid version of your world. And let go of that past of yours. Start to internalize that past of yours does not exist. It never existed. It is just the familiar story you tell. It never existed. Try playing with a new past. In other words, think right now. What is it that you would like to change about your tomorrow or your next week or your next month or your next year? What version of you would you like to step into? Think for a minute here about that. What does it look like? What does it feel like? What does the world around that version of you look like? How does the world around that version of you appear? How does the version of that world around you respond to you? What is in that version of the world around that new version of you? And once you have that in mind, which of course is an extremely important place to be, then if you like, you can play with that by saying, and what version of the past of that person would I like to look at? And you can, if you like, create a new past for that version. And as you switch back and forward between the future of that version and the past of that version, you'll begin to see that those are the same thing. And you can begin to, if you like, make that version of the past your own version of the past. And we're not asking you to make giant leaps here or massive changes, although all that is possible. We're suggesting play with it. Even if you doubt yourself, do it anyway. If you practice it, it will become the new you. Believe the truth of who you are. Step into the version that you want to inhabit. Make it your new reality. Let go of the fake reality. Pick the new one. And of course, we've talked about this many times. Number 2, above all else, be aware of your feelings. They are your personal, infallible guide to knowing whether you're heading in the direction you want to go when you feel good, or in the opposite direction when you will feel bad. Make a promise to yourself here and now, from this day forward, forever, that you will abandon the idea that your feelings come from your circumstances. Your feelings do not come from your circumstance. There is no possible circumstance that has any power to dictate your feelings. You dictate them. Perhaps you're allowing your old belief systems to dictate them, but it's you that is choosing the feelings as a result of what you perceive to be the circumstances around you. You see the circumstance in your old belief system that points to this feeling, and you have that feeling. But it's time to know that, to realize it, and discard it. Whenever you feel bad, there's a lie at the core of it. Whenever you feel bad, there's a lie at the core of it. See that lie, recognize what's going on, and choose life. Choose a different life. Choose a different way to live. Choose a different way to create. And number 3, of course, no stranger to this, any of you, but appreciate everything. Catch yourself as often as you can. How many times have you been on a rampage of appreciation today? How many times were you on a rampage of appreciation yesterday, this week? Just as an exercise here, do a little rampage right now. Look around you and see things in your world that you appreciate. And just go on a rampage about it. Ordinary things, extraordinary things, mundane things, wonderful things, special things, things in your present, things in your new past, and of course your new future things. In the best possible way, appreciation is the slippery slope to feeling good. It is one of those tools in your kit bag, and we recommend that you use it often. You set yourself the task, you set yourself the discipline, the choice to focus on these things. And so, knowing who you are but hanging on to those old beliefs is like having one foot on the dock and one foot in the boat as the two are drifting apart. It is not a comfortable place to be. So we say jump into the boat. Jump into that place where even if you cannot dispel the idea of your past in an instant and have yourself adopt any past at will, at least recognize the possibility. You see, start to loosen your grip on it. Start to pry your fingers off that version. Allow yourself to see it as variable. And then the questions about your past and what happened and what occurred and why they occurred become less and less relevant. The choices you made, some of which you regret, all becomes irrelevant. The things you worry about, which are an extrapolation from a past, become less relevant. Loosen your grip on it, even if only to the extent of seeing it for what it is. We recognize there will be some inertia here. We recognize that you still see yourself after all these years as that person in that body in this place and time. We're just saying, see yourself a little less as that day by day. See yourself a little less as trapped by those circumstances of the past. Because if you are attempting to understand this philosophy and to adopt it and use it as a signpost, as a guide for you in your world and your life, in your choices, in your eternal creation here, it is not an easy place to get to if you wish to hang on to some of those old trappings of the story that was. So we say, jump into the boat, you will find us there. This is our journey together. And of course, we look forward to discussing all of this with you and answering your questions. And so until then, until you have those questions and we are able to intersect with you, we will pass over to you, Mary Beth.
It's interesting. When I got up this morning, I'm doing my best, to be mindful. And even before I do some meditation or getting quiet, I like to, before I even open my eyes, be thinking some good thoughts. But this morning, I wasn't. I went right into, well, it seems like all of this life that I'm leading is completely planned before I came in, and I'm stuck that way. I can't believe I had a thought like that, but it was just so one of those big lies that, wow, if I continue to think that all day, I could really go down that old hole and feel terrible. So I didn't know what the call was about this morning. I hadn't had a chance to look at it, and this is just perfect, of course. And I also wanted to say that to really emphasize what you said, that we are choosing the lie as our reality, as our truth. We are choosing it. It's not default. It feels like it's default, but we are actually making that choice. And we're in such a habit of it, we choose it so quickly, we don't feel like we're at choice. But we are choosing it.
Indeed.
Go ahead.
Indeed. And there are many even on the spiritual path who believe that there's some ordained purpose for them. Or even more than that there is some preordained path that they will follow no matter what. And we say, of course, this is just another version of victimhood. Now, you know by law of attraction that you can never be a victim. You know by law of attraction that there is nobody choosing things for you. You know that is your choice. And to pass this, if you like, choosing off to some other body, even if that body be a god, is another version, if you like, of victimhood. It is a more holy, if you like, version of victimhood, but it is still victimhood. And it takes away from you the idea of who you are. It robs you of the ability to see yourself as the creator that you are. And we recommend that you do not head down that path, as you rightly corrected yourself from this morning, Mary Beth, because it will stifle you. You know it is not your truth. It cannot be your truth. You are choosing it all.
Well, you might as well just give up, in a sense, and just
absolutely. It is
sit with it. Yeah.
It is an unexciting and
very
unchallenging and somewhat depressing idea about you.
Right.
There is nothing ordaining what you shall do. There's nothing ordaining a specific purpose for you. Now, that is not to say that you may not decide that there's some purpose for your life and you seek it and find it and have a joyous experience.
Of course.
That is wonderful, and we applaud that. It is only when any of your choices about any of this stand in the way of you feeling good at any point that we encourage you to pick up the mirror, look at it and say, what's going on here? And of course, we're not talking about a literal mirror, although that might be a good exercise also. But you can say, what's going on here? Why am I feeling this way? What sits beneath this? Let me look at that. Let me dispel that. Let me move into a creation of something different. Indeed.
And say something about this. For me, there's I guess you could call it a fine line. It's not that it's ordained for special people or certain people to awaken to who they are, but it's part of who we are to remember who we are. In other words, to know that we are these powerful creators, that we're part of Source, is we awaken to it when we choose. I would put it that way. But it's like it's in the core of who we are to remember at some point that we are these powerful infinite creators. And it's, you could some people might say, well, certain people are ordained for that, blah blah blah. But the way I see it is that it's just part of who we are. It's just not part of, it is who we are. And so awakening to that, it's not as though some force outside of us is forcing us to do that, but by our very nature, that is one. Well, that's how we get to know that we are these infinite creators, this awakening process, which I feel like this is what we're doing here. But can you say something about that a little more clearly than I'm saying it?
We would say, and channeling is a good example of this, in that as is being discussed here in this community, relevant to this current time that you are in here, that it is a common myth that only some people can channel. And we say the mechanism of channeling, the highway, if you like, on which the car can drive, is there for all to use, and you all are using it. It's just that you're not recognizing exactly what it is.
Yes, perfect.
You're not giving a label to it. And so, yes, of course, all can channel. And we are encouraging all to channel. But let's look at the differences between you and us. You see, we have a different perspective. We have not narrowed our focus down into a space-time reality. We have not narrowed our processing power down to focus on one thing at a time. We have not, if you like, steeped ourselves in this tightly narrowed focus. We have not stepped into that degree of containment of that which we are. We are much more, if you like, aware of timelessness. We are much more aware of the nature of all things. We are much more easily able to float between realities here than you are. But that is because we have chosen that as the size and shape and color and flavor of our consciousness.
Right, chosen unlimitedness rather than limiting, as we do here in the physical.
Exactly. But we, nevertheless, are very like you. We have made these choices, and we are. And we see things in a certain way. So from our vantage point, we can see things which are not easy for you to see. And that is, if you like, why we can talk of these things in a different way than you. But it does not mean that we are sitting up here like God and know all the answers for you and know everything about everything. We just see things from a different perspective and are able to describe, therefore, some ways in which you can look at things differently. That's what we bring to the party here. But we, let us finish here and get to what you say. We are in awe of you. When we say you are on the leading edge here, we are not kidding you. We have used the word extreme. You have chosen this enormously narrowed down focus, And that gives you the ability to do these things in your world, to create from this perspective. Can you see what an enormous thing that is? Look at the world around you, this delicious thing that you've created. Chocolate chip ice cream you can taste. I mean, this is it. We are in awe of you. We are in awe of you. For this is a magnificent exercise that you are on. And we enjoy enormously our interactions with you, because even though we are not experiencing things as you do, we learn from you about your experience, even as you learn from us about an expanded consciousness experience. And so as we interact here, what we are doing, as you say, Mary Beth, is encouraging you to remember. We are bringing you back because you've got so distracted by this magnificent game that you've created and so involved in it, which was exactly your intention, that you have forgotten who you are, which was not exactly your intention.
Right.
And so we're just here to remind you. And of course, we are enjoying this interaction. We kid you not. We are enjoying this interaction because of the difference between you and us. Go ahead.
Because we have the freedom to choose, we can even choose to be victims and think that that's it for us, and then we wonder why we don't feel so great, and we want to start to remember. And so there is no losing who we are, because even stepping into victimhood is eventually going to help us, in a sense, you could say, turn around and say, wait a minute, I had more power than this, I think, Exactly. I have the power to choose. I can do something more than this. I can do something that feels better than this. I can be something that feels joyful. So
Indeed.
It's all good. It all gets us back to where we want to be, in a sense.
Yes, indeed. As you have experiences, you make choices. And you are just making choices from this framework that you have selected. And we are making choices from the framework we have selected. Your choices, as we said, could be considered to be more extreme than ours. Your experiences are more extreme than ours. We're using that word carefully here because we do not wish to imply that this is a negative experience, this is a negative world of yours, a negative context for it. Nothing could be further from the truth. As we said, this is a magnificent game. And in none of these discussions and intersections are we in any way attempting to talk you out of playing the game. That is your choice and your choice alone. We're just suggesting to you ways in which the game may be more joyful. We are your coach on the sidelines, if you will. You are seeking to play this game, and we are helping you with some of the techniques that you can use to be better and better at it and to make different choices at it. That's because you have asked us to be here, even as we have asked you to join with us in this intersections.
It's like a big experiment. Although game is a lighter, more fun word than experiment.
Some in this one's world object to the word game. There's got to be something more lofty and divine and holy and sacred and all that sort of stuff about it. And we say, if you can say that, then you have failed to understand the nature of your choices. You fail to understand the power of yourself. And you fail to understand the reasons why you have elected to be here. Because when you understand that, you will know that there is no better game in town. This is it. This is the leading edge. And here you are. And we invite you to participate in it, of course. We invite you to play it to the full, of course. As we said, we're just here to, sitting on the sidelines to egg you on.
And with all of that, I still have to say that when I'm in that state of really feeling that deep peace and really feeling that love, the more I do, I feel it. I would define it as feeling. I don't use the word holy and sacred, but that's how I feel.
Hmm.
Not that I'm choosing something lofty, but I feel that expanded love feels like that's it, the best thing ever.
Exactly.
You know.
Yes. Of course. Your words are good.
Anybody else have a question or a comment? If not, I think maybe it's time to wrap up here, Tara.
So, choose a life or choose the lie. It is not a stark choice. It's a recommended choice, if you will. Because we say, if you will choose life, choose to live the life you want, if you will choose to start to recognize the truth of who you are, even if it is only an intellectual understanding and much of the automatic stuff remains, still consciously choose it. And as you play with that, and we encourage you to play with it, you will find that some of your questions about yourself drift away, float away, become non-issues, and new questions will come. New questions about what you can do next, and new vistas will open up for you. Doors will appear, we promise you, that did not exist for that other version of you in that other version of the world. They were not there. But as you step into this new version, the doors will be there. And all you need to do is push against them and open them and step through into a world of all possibilities. As we said before, we have enjoyed this interaction immensely and we are complete.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Robin and Tara.
Hmm.
And we'll see you next time.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Bye for now.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.